Travel always gets me. Get in your car and drive it all over me. Uh, hey guys, welcome. Hello from the underground. Hope y'all doing well. Rah 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 is a pleasure, a privilege, an absolute joy to be continuing Balzac's �𝐥𝐝 with you. So good. I mean, we're feeling all right about it. To celebrate, we put some butter in our coffee. That's how excited we are. Cheers. We're gonna just dive backwards a little bit, just recap a few previous passages as we continue today, because this is a luxurious book. Like, do not mind at all double dipping some of the phrases and passages used in the past, because you can just get lost in this book, really. Just languish over the passages. I love this book, seriously. So cheers, you guys. Let's continue. Butter coffee. Sorry, that's so indulgent. All right, no, seriously. Victorine thought she was hearing an angel's voice. The heavens opened to let her in. The Maison Vaquer took on the bright, unreal coloring stage decorators give to palaces. She loved, and she was loved, or at least she believed so. And what woman would not have believed as she did after seeing Rastignac and listening to his voice in that hour stolen away from the Argus eyes of the boarding house? Rastignac, struggling against his conscience, knowing he was doing wrong and forcing himself to do it with the whole strength of his will, told himself that he would atone for this venial sin by ensuring a woman's happiness. Desperation lent new beauty to his face. It shone with the splendid light of the fires of hell within his heart. Luckily for him, the miracle happened. Vautrin came in high spirits and at once read the soul of these two young people whom he had united by the contrivances of his diabolical genius. But now his deep, mocking voice broke in upon their bliss, singing, "My dear Franchette is charming in her simplicity." Victorine fled with a happiness in her heart that completely made up for all the sorrow which life had so far brought her. Poor girl! Rastignac's hand holding hers, his hair brushing her cheek. His words spoken so close to her ear that she had felt his warm lips, a trembling arm around her waist, a stolen kiss on her neck. These were the solemn betrothal rites, and the nearness of fat Sylvie, who might intrude into this now radiant dining room at any moment, gave them more ardent, more intense, more entrancing than any fine tokens of devotion the most famous love stories could boast of. These sweet posies, to use a pretty expression from our forefathers, seemed almost crimes to a devout young girl who went to confessions every fortnight. In that hour, she had poured out more of the treasure of her heart's deepest feelings than she would have given in later days of wealth and happiness in surrendering herself completely. "The thing is done," said Vautrin to Eugene. "Our two dandies have fallen out. It all came about in proper form, a difference of opinion. Our pigeon insulted my falcon. Tomorrow in the redoubt of Clegnaine-Court, at 8:30, Mademoiselle Taillefer will become sole heiress of her father's fortune and affection, while she is calmly sitting here, dipping her sippets of bread and butter in her coffee. Isn't it comic to be able to foretell that? The Taillefer youth is very clever with his sword, and he's as cocksure as if he had a fistful of aces. But he'll be let blood by a thrust I have invented, a way of raising a sword and pinking your man in the face. I will show you the thrust. It's uncommonly useful." Rastignac listened in stupid dumbness, unable to utter a word. Just then, old 𝐿𝐥𝐝, Biancan, and a few other boarders came in. "Now, you are in just the frame of mind I wanted to see you in," Vautrin said. You know what you're about. All right, my little eaglet. You shall be the ruler among men. You are strong. You stand on your own feet. You got spunk. I think the world of you." He made a movement as if to take Eugene's hand, but Rastignac brusquely withdrew it and fell into a chair, the color ebbing from his face. He seemed to see a pool of blood spread up before his eyes. "Ah, so a few tattered swaddling clothes still cling about us, the strained rags of our virtue still hang together," said Vautrin in a low voice. "But Papa d'Olaban has 3 millions. I know where his pile is. The dowry will wash you as white as a wedding dress, even in your own eyes." Rastignac hesitated no longer. He made up his mind that he would go that evening to warn both the Taillefer's, father and son. Vautrin left the room, and Goriot came over to him and said in his ear, "You look down in the mouth, my boy. I'll cheer you up. Come with me." The old vermicelli maker was lighting his taper and at one of the lamps as he spoke, and Eugene followed him upstairs with considerable curiosity. "Let's go into your room," said the good-natured old fellow. He had asked Sylvie for the student's key. "You thought this morning that she didn't love you, didn't you now? She sent you away with a flea in your ear, and you went feeling cross and miserable. Silly boy! She was waiting for me, don't you see? We were to go and finish arranging about a set of rooms, a regular jewel of a place, which you will move into 3 days from now. Don't give me away. She wants it to be a surprise, but I don't care to keep you in the dark any longer. You will be at the Rue d'Artois, only a step or two from the Rue Saint-Lazare. You'll be as comfortable as a prince there. The furniture we've got for you is good enough for a bride. We've done a lot of things in the last month, without a word to you. My lawyer has begun the battle. My daughter is to have 36,000 francs a year, the interest on her money, and I'm going to insist on having her 800,000 francs invested in good, solid land." Eugene was dumb. He paced up and down, with his arms folded from end to end of his wretched, untidy room. Old Goriot seized the occasion, when the student had his back to him, and put on the mantelpiece a red morocco box with the Rastignac arms, stamped on the leather in gold. "My dear child," said the kind old fellow, "I've been in this business up to the neck, but do you see there was plenty of selfishness in my concern with it? I am an interested party in your change of abode. You won't refuse me, will you, if I ask something of you?" "What is it?" "Above your rooms, there's a room on the 5th floor which is to let them in. Above your room, there's a room on the 5th floor which is to let with them. That's where I shall live. Don't you agree? I am growing old, and I'm too far from my girls. I shall not trouble you at all. I'll just be there, that's all. You will come and talk to me about her every evening. That won't be tiresome for you, will it? When you come in after I have gone to bed, I shall hear you and say to myself, 'He has just seen my little Delphine. He has been with her at the ball. She is happy thanks to him.' If I were sick, it would do my heart good just to hear you coming in or going out or moving about. There'll be so much of my daughter in you. It's only a step from the Champs-Élysées, where they go every day. I shall never get there too late to see them, as I sometimes do now, and perhaps she will come to your rooms. I shall hear her and see her trotting about in her morning quilted gown, picking her steps daintily like a little cat. In the last month, she has become my little girl again, as gay and frisky as she was before. Her heart is growing well again, and she owes her happiness to you. Oh, I would fetch the moon out of the sky for you. Just now, when we were coming back, she said to me, 'Papa, I'm so happy.' It chills me when they call me father, stiffly, but when they call me papa, I seem to see them as little children again. They bring back all my memories. I am truly their father then. I forget that you are not still mine, and no one else's." The poor man wiped his eyes. He was in tears. It was a long time since I heard her call me that. A long time since she put her arm in mine. Yes, it is all of 10 years since I last walked arm in arm with one of my daughters. How sweet it is to suit my step to hers, to feel the light touch of her dress and the warmth of her arm. I took Delphine everywhere this morning. I went into the shops with her and brought her back home again. Oh, you must let me live near you. Sometimes you'll need someone to do a service for you, and I shall be there to do it. Oh, if only that great black Vanellatian would die. If his gout had the sense to attack his stomach, how happy my poor girl would be. You would be my son-in-law then. You would be her husband, openly. She has never known what it is to be happy, and this world counts happiness, and that excuses everything, in my opinion. God, who is good, must surely be on the side of fathers who love their children. She cares for you quite enough, and more than enough, he said, nodding his head after a moment's silence. As we went along, she was chattering about you to me. He is good-looking, father, isn't he? He has a kind heart. Does he talk to you about me? Between the Rue Auteuil and the passage of panoramas, she said enough about you to fill a library of books. Yes, she poured out her heart to me. For the whole of this fine morning I was old man no longer. I felt so light. I did not weigh an ounce. I told her that you had passed on the 1,000-franc note to me. She was moved to tears, poor darling. But that's what you have there on your mantelpiece. Oh, but what's that you have there on your mantelpiece? And old Goriot at last? I said old Goriot at last. He was dying of impatience as he saw Eugene standing there without a sign. Eugene was standing, looking at his neighbor in a bemused way. He was completely dumbfounded. This news of the realization of his dearest hopes contrasted so violently with Vautrin's announcement of the duel arranged for the next day that he experienced all the sensations of a nightmare. He turned to the mantelpiece, saw the little square box, opened it, and found inside a watch made by Bruguet, wrapped in paper. On the paper these words were written: I want you to think of me every hour, because... Signed, Delphine. The last word referred, no doubt, to some scene that had taken place between them. It touched Eugene's heart. His arms were enameled. Inside the gold watch case, he had long coveted just such a trinket. The chain, the key, the workmanship, the design were all he could have wished. Old Goriot's face was beaming. He must have promised his daughter that he would tell her every little detail of the effect her present produced, and of Eugene's surprise. He was a sharer in the young people's feelings of anticipation and excitement, and seemed to be not the least happy of the three. He loved Rastignac already, both for his daughter's sake and for his own. You must go and see her this evening. She expects you. That great lump of an Alassian is having supper with his dancer. He looked pretty silly when my lawyer told him where he stood. And he professes to love my daughter, this side of idolatry, does he? Just let him lay a finger on her, and I'll kill him. The very thought that Delphine is his, he heaved a sigh. It's reason enough for me to make away with him, and you couldn't call it manslaughter. He has a pig's body and a calf's brain. You will take me with you, won't you? Yes, dear Father Goriot, you know very well that I'm fond of you. Yes, indeed, I can see that you are. You are not ashamed of me. Let me embrace you. And he held the student closely in his arms. You will make her really happy. Promise me that. You will go this evening, won't you? Oh, yes. I have to go out on business I can't put off. Can I be of any use to you? Well, yes, you could. Will you go to old Taillefer while I visit Madame de Nucingen and ask him to see me sometime this evening? I want to speak to him about a matter of the utmost importance. Can it be true, then, young man? Exclaimed Goriot, his face suddenly darkening. Are you really courting his daughter, as those imbeciles down below say? By God! You don't know what a ramp from Goriot can mean. If I found out that you were throwing dust in our eyes, one blow from my fist would soon settle your business. No, the thing's not possible. I swear to you that I love only one woman in the world, said the student, though it's only in these last few moments that I've realized it. Oh, what happiness, cried 𝐎𝐥𝐝. But Taillefer's son is fighting a duel tomorrow, the student went on, and I have heard that he is to be killed. What is that to you? But he must be told to prevent his son from going, cried Eugene. Vautrin's voice interrupted him. The man was standing at the threshold of the door and singing, "O Richard, O my king, all the world abandons thee, brum, 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 brum. I've roamed the world for years round, no matter what, tra-la-la-la." "Gentlemen," shouted Christophe, "the soup is waiting for you, and they're all at the table." "Here," called Vautrin, "come and take down a bottle of my Bordeaux." "Do you think your watch is pretty?" asked 𝐎𝐥𝐝. "She has good taste, eh?" Vautrin, old 𝐎𝐥𝐝, and Rastignac went down together, and because they were late, found themselves obliged to sit together at table. Eugene was as distant and cold in his manner to Vautrin during the meal as he could be, but Vautrin, so charming a man in Madame Vauquer's eyes, had never shown himself more gay and light-hearted. He fairly sparkled with wit, and his sallies set the whole table in a roar. His assurance and coolness filled Eugene with dismay. "What's come over you today?" Madame Vauquer asked him. "You're as merry as a grig." "I'm always happy when I've made a good bargain." "Bargain," said Eugene. "Yes, why not? I have just delivered a consignment of goods, and I shall be paid a handsome commission for it. Don't you like my face, Mademoiselle Morgane?" he went on, turning to the old maid as he noticed that she was watching him closely. "Is there something wrong with it that you goggle at it like that? If so, you must tell me, and I'll have it changed, just to please you. We shan't fall out about it, Poirier, eh?" he added, leering at the retired clerk. "By Jupiter, you'd make a wonderful model for Hercules out of a spree," the young artist said to him. "All right, I'll be your model if Mademoiselle Morgane will pose as the Venus of Père Lachaise," replied Vautrin. "And what about Poirier?" "Oh, Poirier shall pose as Poirier." "He'll be a garden god," cried Vautrin. "His name means a pear, a sleepy pear," Duncan broke in. "You would be served between the pears and the cheese, then." "What nonsense you're talking," said Madame Vauquer. "You would do better to pour us some Bordeaux from the bottle, I see, poking its nose up yonder. That would do our hearts good, besides being very stomachical." "Gentlemen," said Vautrin, "Madame President calls us to order. Madame Culture and Mademoiselle Victorine will not take your jokes amiss, but respect the innocent ears of aged 𝐎𝐥𝐝. I propose a bottle of rum of the wine of Bordeaux, rendered doubly illustrious by the name of Lafitte. No political allusions intended. Come on, you heathen idols," he added, staring at Christophe, who was standing like a post. "Here, Christophe, do you not know your own name? Trot out the booze, heathen." "There you are, sir," said Christophe, holding out the bottle. Vautrin filled Eugene's glass and 𝐎𝐥𝐝's, and then slowly poured a few drops into his own, merely tasting the wine while his two neighbors drank. Suddenly he made a grimace. "The devil, it's corked. You can have the rest of this yourself, Christophe, and get some more for us. Take the bottle from the right-hand side. You know, don't you? There are 16 of us. Bring 8 bottles." As you're turning your pockets inside out for us," said the artist, "I'll stand us 100 chestnuts." "Ha! Ha! Bor!" Exclamations shot from all corners of the table like squibs from a firework. "Come on now, ma Vauquer, a couple of bottles of champagne," cried Vautrin. "What's that you say? Is that all you want? Why not ask for the whole house while you're at it? 2 bottles of champagne. That would cost 12 francs. I haven't enough money coming in to be able to afford all that. No, indeed. But if Monsieur Eugene has a mind to pay for it, I'll provide currant wine." "I know that currant wine. It's as good as a black drought." muttered the medical student. "Shut up, Biancan," cried Rastignac. "I can't bear to hear anything talking about black draughts. It makes me... Yes, champagne, by all means, I'll pay for it," he added. "Sylvie," said Madame Vauquer, "get out the biscuits and the little cakes." "Your little cakes have grown up," said Vautrin. "They've got beards. But bring forward the biscuits." Soon the boudoir circulated, the guests grew livelier, the fun waxed faster and more furious. Wild guffaws were interrupted by imitations of various animal cries, when the museum official took it into his mind to mimic a petty street cry, which he had some resemblance to the caterwauling of an enormous tomcat. 8 voices struck up at once. "Knives to grind, birdseed for the little birdies, cream cornets, ladies, cream cornets, mind your crockery, mind your crocks, all aboard, for a sail on the sea. Beat your wives, beat your clothes, old lace, old hats for sale, cherries, sweet cherries." But Biancan was awarded a poem for the way he whined through his nose. "Umbrella man!" In a few seconds, an ear-splitting din filled the room, a volley of wild absurdities. A real cat's concert, which Vautrin directed as if he were conducting an orchestra, while at the same time he kept an eye on Eugene and old Goyo, who seemed to be fuddled already. They were leaning back in their chairs, drinking little and contemplating the scene before them all in its unwonted confusion and in air of gravity. They were both preoccupied with the thought of what they had to do that evening, and yet they felt that it was impossible to get up and go. Vautrin was watching the change that came over their faces, and chose the moment when their eyelids fluttered and seemed about to close to bend over Rastignac and say in his ear, "We're not fly enough, my little lad, to match ourselves against our Papa Vautrin, and he's too fond of you to let you make a fool of yourself. When I have made up my mind to do a thing, only heaven itself is strong enough to stand in my way. Oh, so we thought we would go and warn old Taillefer, did we? Tell tales out of school like a child? The oven is hot, the dough kneaded, the bread on the baker's peel. Tomorrow we'll eat it and make the crumbs fly. And would we prevent the loaf from being put into the oven? No, it's going to be baked. If we have a few little conscientious scruples, they'll all be digested with the bread. While we take our little nap, Colonel Count Franciensi's sword point will clear the way for Michel Taillefer's inheritance for us. And her brother's successor, Victorine, will have a snug 15,000 francs a year. I have already made inquiries, and I know that her mother's estate amounts to more than 300,000. Eugene heard these words, but had no power of replying. He felt his tongue immovably glued to the roof of his mouth, and found himself overtaken by an irresistible drowsiness. Already, the table and the faces of the guests swam in a field of vision through a luminous fog. Presently, the noise subsided. The boarders left, one after another. Then, when there remained only Madame Vauquer, Madame Coche, Mademoiselle Victorine, Vautrin, and old Goyo, Rastignac saw, as if in a dream, Madame Vauquer busily engaged in filling up some bottles with the dregs of all the others. "Ah, how lively they are! What it is to be young!" said the widow. These words were the last that reached Eugene's mind. "There's no one like what Monsieur Vautrin is for livening things up," said Sylvie. "Well, just take a look at Christophe. He's snoring like a humming top." "Goodbye, Ma," said Vautrin. "I'm off to the theatre on the boulevard to see M. Marty in Le Mont Sauvage, a grand play taken from La Solitaire. I will take you with me if you care to go, and these ladies too." "Thank you, I must refuse," said Madame Coche. "What, my good lady," cried Madame Vauquer, "you refuse to go and see a play made from Le Solitaire? a work by Attala de Chamberlain, that's botched, which we enjoy reading so much, and which was so affecting that we wept like Magdalenes over it under the lime trees last summer. And then it's a moralizing work, which might be very edifying for your young lady. We are forbidden to go to the play, answered Victorine. Just look. These two have left us, said Vautrin, shaking the heads of old Goriot and Eugene in a comical way. He settled the student more comfortably with his head against the back of the chair, kissed him warmly on the forehead, and began to sing. Sleep on, my sweet angels. I'll watch over you while you're sleeping. I'm afraid he may be ill, said Victorine. Stay and look after him, then, answered Vautrin. That's what you should do as a dutiful wife, he whispered in her ear. The young man adores you, and you will be his little wife. There's a fortune for you, in short, he added aloud. They were esteemed throughout the land, lived happily ever after, and had lots of children. That's how all romances end. Come on, Ma. He went out, turning to Ma Vacher and giving her a hug. Put on your hat, your fine flowered dress, and the Countess's scarf. I'm going to fetch a cab for you, no less. And he departed, singing, Sun, oh sun, whose gorgeous rays make the pumpkin's face blaze. Goodness me, God bless my soul, I can tell you, Madame Culture, I could live happily like a man in the housetops. Look at this, she said, turning to look at the vermicelli maker. Here's old Goriot tight. It never once entered his head to take me anywhere, the old miser, but heavens above, he's going to tumble down on the floor. It's downright indecent for a man of his years to fuddle his wits like that. You'll be telling me that he can't fuddle what he's got. Sylvie, get him up to his room. Sylvie supported the old fellow under his arms, walked him upstairs, and threw him just as he was across the bed, like a parcel. Poor young man, said Madame Culture, drawing back a lock of Eugene's hair which had fallen over his eyes. He's like a girl. He doesn't know what dissipation is. I can tell you this, said Madame Vacher. 31 years I have kept my boarding house, and no end of young fellows have passed through my hands, as the saying is, but I've never seen one as nice as Monsieur Eugene, nor one as noble-looking either. Doesn't he look handsome sleeping? Come, let his head lean on your shoulder, Madame Culture. There, he's sliding over towards Mademoiselle Victorine. There's a Providence looks after young things. A little more, and he would have split his head against the table or the chair. They'd make a very pretty couple, these two. Hush, my dear neighbor, cried Madame Vacher. What a thing to say. Bah, said Madame Vacher. He doesn't hear. Come on, Sylvie. Come and help me dress. I'm going to put on my best stays. What, your big stays after dinner, madame? Said Sylvie. No, find someone else to lace you up. I'm not going to be your murderer. It's terrible foolishness, and you could get yourself easily dead by it. I don't care. I must do credit to Monsieur Vautrin. Are you as fond of your heirs as all that? Come, Sylvie, don't answer back, said the widow as she left the room. At her age, too, said the cook to Victorine, with a jerk of her thumb in the direction of the departing mistress. Madame Culture and her ward were left alone in the dining room with Eugene, who still slept on Victorine's shoulders. Christophe's snores, echoing through the silent house, made Eugene's quiet slumber seem still more peaceful by contrast. The student slept as engagingly as a child does. Victorine was happy in being free to do one of those loving kindnesses in which a woman's overflowing heart finds its expression, and one which brought the young man so innocently close to her that she could feel the beating of his heart. Her face revealed a maternal protectiveness and pride which gave her dignity. Amid the countless thoughts that thronged in her young, pure heart, she was conscious of a quick flutter of her pulses at the warmth of the young body that lay so artlessly against hers. "Poor dear child," said Madame 𝐎𝐥𝐝, squeezing her hand. The old lady looked at the girl's open face, with its look of suffering endured, on which happiness now shed a soft radiance, as if a halo encircled her head. Victorine was like one of the naive paintings of the Middle Ages, in which all accessories are neglected, and the artist reserves the magic of his brush for the painting of the calm, proud face, whose pallor seems to catch a golden reflection from heaven. "But he only took 2 glasses after all, Mamma," said Victorine, passing her fingers through Eugene's hair. "If he were a dissipated young man, child, he would have carried his wine like all the others. The fact that he was overcome by it speaks in his favor." They heard the sound of wheels outside in the street. "Mamma," said the girl, "here comes Monsieur Vautrin. You take Monsieur Eugene. I would rather not let that man see me like this. He says things which leave a stain in your mind, and his look makes you feel as if you had nothing on." "Oh, no, you are mistaken," said Madame 𝐎𝐥𝐝. "He is a fine man, a little like my late husband, Monsieur 𝐎𝐥𝐝, rather abrupt in his manner, but with a kind heart. His bark is much worse than his bite." As she spoke, Vautrin came in without a sound, and looked at the picture the 2 young things made in the lamplight, which seemed to caress them with its soft beams. "Well now," he said, folding his arms, "here's a scene which would have inspired good Bernardine de Saint-Pierre, who wrote Paul de Virginie, to write some pretty pages. Youth is a lovely thing indeed, Madame 𝐎𝐥𝐝. Poor child, sleep on," he added, with his eyes on Eugene. "Luck sometimes comes when we are sleeping. There's something touching and attractive to me in this young man, Madame. It's because I know his nature is as noble as his face. Look, is he not like a cherub leaning on an angel's shoulder? He is a man worth loving. If I were a woman, I would die. No, nothing so stupid. Live for him. As I see them together like this, Madame," he went on in an undertone, bending to speak in the widow's ear, "I cannot help thinking that God made them for one another. God works in a mysterious way. He searches the heart and the reins," he declaimed aloud. "When I see you together, my children, united by the innocence of both, and by all the affections of the human heart, I say to myself that it is impossible that you should ever be parted in the future. God is just, but it seems to me," he said to the girl, "I have seen the line of prosperity marked in your hand. Let me see it, Mademoiselle Victorine. I know something about palmistry. I have often told fortunes. Come, no, don't be afraid. Ah, what's this I see? Upon my word, before very long you will be one of the richest heiresses in Paris. You will heap happiness upon the man who loves you. Your father calls you to his side. You'll marry a handsome young man with the title, who adores you." The heavy footsteps of the flirtatious widow coming downstairs interrupted Vautrin's fortune-telling at this point. "Ha! Here comes ma Valkyr, fair as a star, decked like a Christmas tree. Do we not feel just a shade too light, ma?" he asked, laying a hand on the lady at the place where her corset took most strain. "Our little front is well squeezed in. If we get worked up, there will be an explosion. But I will gather up the fragments with an antiquary's care. There is a man, cheers, who can speak the language of French gallantly," said the widow. bending to speak in Madame 𝐎𝐥𝐝's ear. "Goodbye, my children," Vautrin went on, turning to Eugene and Victorine. "My blessings on you," he said, laying his hand on their heads. "Believe me, mademoiselle, the prayers of a righteous man count for something. They are bound to bring good fortune. God hears them." "Goodbye, dear friend," said Madame Vacher to her boarder. "Do you think," she added in a whisper, "that Monsieur Vautrin has intentions with regard to me?" "Mercy on us! Ah, mamma dear," said Victorine with a sigh, examining her hand when the two women were left alone. "Suppose what that kind Monsieur Vautrin said comes true?" "Well, there's only one thing needed to make it happen," replied the old lady. "If your monster of a brother just fell off his horse—" "Oh, Mamma! Goodness! Perhaps it's a sin to wish ill on your enemy," the widow continued. "Oh, well, I will do a penance for it. Still, there's no lie to say that I would carry flowers to his grave with pleasure, black-hearted creature that he is. He's too much of a coward to speak up for his own mother, and he cheats you out of your share of what was left by his artful dodges. My cousin had a handsome fortune. Unfortunately for you, the personal property she brought with her has never been so much as mentioned. I could hardly bear my good luck if it costs someone's life," said Victorine. "And if my brother had to die to make me happy, I would rather stay here always." "Heaven knows it's just as that good Monsieur Vautrin says. And you can see he is very religious," said Madame 𝐎𝐥𝐝. "I was very pleased to find he is not an unbeliever like the rest of them, who speak of God with less respect than they give to the devil. Well, as he says, who can tell by what ways it may please Providence to lead us?" Helped by Sylvie, the two women finally carried Eugene to his room and laid him on his bed, and the cook loosened his clothes and made him more comfortable before they left him. When her guardian's back was turned, Victorine kissed Eugene's forehead with all the bliss that this very criminal act could bring her. Then she went back to her room, gathered together, as it were, into a single thought, all the 1,001 delights of that day, and after long contemplation of the pictures she had made of her memories, she fell asleep, the happiest creature in Paris. The merrymaking that evening, under cover of which Vautrin had made Eugene and old Goriot drink drugged wine, was a decisive factor in the man's ruin. Biancan, half tipsy, forgot to question Mademoiselle Marquenot about the cheat death. The very mention of his name would certainly have put Vautrin on his guard, or rather Jacques Collin, to give him his real name, for he was in fact the famous convict. Then the joke about the Venus of Père-Lachaise made Mademoiselle Marquenot make up her mind to betray the criminal, although she had noted Colin's generosity and had been wondering a moment before whether she might not make a better bargain for herself by warning him and helping him to escape during the night. She had gone out, escorted by Poirier, to look for the famous chief detective in the Petite Rue Sainte-Anne, still thinking that she was dealing with the senior official named Gondereau. The great man received her politely. They talked for a time, arranging exactly how Mademoiselle Marquenot was to confirm that Vautrin's shoulder bore the fatal brand, and then she asked for the draught she was to use. The great man turned to look for the little phial in a drawer of his desk with a gesture of such satisfaction that she began to suspect that there was something more important involved in this capture than the mere arrest of a runaway convict. She racked her brains to find what it might be, and guessed that traitors in the prison had given information, and that in consequence of this the police were hoping to arrive in time to lay hands on a considerable sum of money. When she voiced her suspicion, the old fox of the Petite Rue Sainte-Anne began to smile, and he tried to put her off the scent. "You are mistaken," he replied. "Collins is the most dangerous Sorbonne ever known among the criminal classes, that's all. The rascals know it well. He is the flag they rally round, their support and stay, their Napoleon, in short. They are all devoted to him. That joker will never leave his trunk in the Place de Grève." My French is terrible, I'm sorry. Mademoiselle Mauconneau seemed rather bewildered. Gournot explained the two slang words he had used, Sorbonne and trunk, are forcible expressions from the lingo used by thieves, invented to satisfy the need, which they were the first to feel, to consider the human head under two aspects. The Sorbonne is the head of the living man, his brain, his power of advising and directing. Tronc is the contemptuous word designed to express the uselessness of a head parted from its body by the executioner. "Colin makes a fool of us," he went on. "When we meet men like him, who are like a bar of tempered English steel, there's one thing we can do. We can make a shaft to kill them. If they take it into their heads to offer the slightest resistance when we're arresting them, we are counted on finding several pretexts for killing Colin tomorrow morning. It saves a trial, and society is rid of him without having to pay for guarding and feeding him. It costs much more than 30,000 francs, which you are going to get to proceed with the case, summon witnesses and compensate them, carry out the sentence, and so on, all the red tape necessary to rid us legally of one of these rapscallions. We save time, too. With a good bayonet thrust in the cheat death's bread basket, we prevent 100 crimes and avoid a corruption of 50 scamps, who will be very prudently take the hint and stay outside the law courts. This is good police work. Real philanthropists will tell you that we prevent crime by going to work that way." "And it's serving our country," said Poirier. "Bless me," replied the chief detective. "You're talking sense this evening. Yes, of course, we are serving our country, and people in general are very unjust in the way they think of us. We render society very great service, which goes unrecognized. Well, it's the duty of a superior man to rise above and be indifferent to prejudice, and a Christian must resign himself to enduring the wrongs that doing right entails, when it is not done in accordance with conventional notions. Paris is Paris, you see. That explains my life. I have the honor to wish you good evening, mademoiselle. I shall be in the Jardin du Roi tomorrow with my men. Send Christophe to the Rue des Bouffons, to the house I was staying in, and tell him to ask for Monsieur Goldarot. Monsieur, I am obliged to you. If you ever have anything stolen from me, come to me, and I'll do what I can to have it found. I am at your service, sir." "Well," said Poirier to Mademoiselle Mauconneau, "to think that there are idiots who are all of a tremble at the very name of the police. That was the most agreeable gentleman, and what he wants you to do is easy as ABC." The next day was to take its place in the annals of the Maison Vauquer as one of the most extraordinary it had ever known. Until then, the most startling event in its peaceful existence had been the meteoric apparition of the false Comtesse de Mesnil. But everything was to pale before the catastrophe of this great day, which was destined to furnish matter for conversation to Madame Vauquer to the end of her days. To begin with, Goriot and Eugene de Rastignac slept till 11 o'clock. Madame Vauquer who had returned from the �𝐿𝐥𝐝 that midnight, lay in bed till 10:30. The household work was in arrears because Christophe, who had finished the bottle of wine Vautrin had given him, was sleeping off the effects. Poirier and Mademoiselle Morconeux had no complaint to make about the delay in serving breakfast. Victorine and Madame 𝐎𝐥𝐝, too, slept late. Vautrin went out before 8 o'clock and came back just as breakfast was served. Nobody grumbled at the lateness of the hour. Therefore, when Sylvie and Christophe knocked at all the doors at 11:15 and announced that breakfast was waiting, continuing. Mademoiselle Morconeux came down first. While Sylvie and the manservant were out of the room, she emptied the potion into the silver cup belonging to Vautrin, in which the cream for her coffee was heating in the bain-marie, with the other cups. The old maid had reckoned on this particular custom of the boarding-house for the carrying out of her plot. At last, the 7 boarders were gathered in the dining-room, not without some difficulty, as Eugene was coming down last of all, stretching himself and yawning as he came. The messenger handed him a letter from Madame de Nucingen, which read thus: "Where are you concerned, my friend, I feel neither of false pride nor anger. I waited for you till 2 o'clock in the morning, waited for a person I love. That is such torture that no one who has known it can ever inflict it on another. It is easy to see that you have never loved before. What can have happened? I am devoured by anxiety. If I had not been afraid of betraying my heart's secrets, I would have come to find out what good fortune or calamity had befallen you. But how can I walk or drive out at that hour? Would it not have been ruin? I have been feeling how wretched it is to be a woman. Send me some reassuring word. Explain why you did not come after what my father told you. I shall be angry with you, but I will forgive you. Are you ill? Oh, why do you live so far away? Send me just one word, for pity's sake. You will come soon, won't you? If you are busy, a word will be enough. Say, I'm on my way, or I'm ill. But if you were ill, my father would have come to tell me. What can have happened?" "Yes, what has happened?" cried Eugene, crumpling the letter with his hand without reading any more, and bursting into the dining room. "What time is it?" 11:30, said Vautrin, as he added sugar to his coffee. The escaped convict cast a basilisk glance at Eugene, the blood-congealing, mesmeric look that certain men of outstanding magnetic power possess the secret of, with which it is said they can quell raving madmen in the madhouse. Eugene shook in every limb. Outside, the noise of a cab became audible, and a second later a servant of Monsieur Taillefer's livery, instantly recognized by Madame 𝐎𝐥𝐝 with a scarred face, rushed into the room. "Mademoiselle," he exclaimed, "your father is asking for you. A dreadful thing has happened. Monsieur Frederic has been fighting a duel and has a sword thrust in the forehead. The doctor has given up hopes of saving him. You will scarcely be in time to say goodbye to him. He has lost consciousness." "Poor young man!" cried Vautrin. How can a man engage in brawls when he has a solid 30,000 livres a year? There's no doubt at all the young people of today don't know how to behave themselves. Sir, shouted Eugene. Well, what's the matter, my big baby? Said Vautrin, calmly drinking all his coffee in one draught, an operation which Mademoiselle Malconeau was watching too closely for her to have any excitement to spare for the extraordinary event that had struck everyone else dumb with amazement. Aren't there duels every morning in Paris? I will go with you, Victorine, said Madame 𝐎𝐥𝐝. The two women hurried off without waiting to put on either hat or shawl. Before she went, Victorine, with tears in her eyes, gave Eugene a glance that said, I did not think our happiness would bring me tears. My word, you must be a prophet, Monsieur Vautrin, said Madame 𝐎𝐿𝐴. I'm all sorts of things, said Jacques Collin. How strange it is, Madame 𝐎𝐿𝐴 went on, improving the occasion with a string of platitudes. Death takes us off without warning. The young people often go before the old. We women are lucky not to have to fight duels, but we have other troubles that men don't suffer from. We bear children, and a mother's pains last a long time. What a stroke of luck for Victorine. Her father will be forced to acknowledge her now. Then you say, said Vautrin, looking at Eugene. Yesterday she hadn't a penny. Today she's worth several millions. Well, now, Monsieur Eugene, exclaimed Madame 𝐎𝐿𝐴, you've done pretty well for yourself. When he heard this, old Goriot looked at the student and saw the crumpled letter in his hand. You didn't read it all? What does this mean? Can you be like all the others? He asked. Madame, I shall never marry Mademoiselle Victorine, said Eugene, turning to Madame 𝐎𝐿𝐴. The horror and loathing in his tone astonished his hearers. Old Goriot seized the student's hand and grasped it warmly. He could have kissed it. Oh ho, said Vautrin. The Italians have a good saying. To tempo. Is there an answer? Said Madame de Nucingen's messenger to Eugene. Say I will come. The man left. In Eugene's violently excited state, he could not think of prudence. What should I do? He cried aloud. There is no proof. Vautrin began to smile, though the draught had been absorbed by his system and was beginning to take effect. The convict was so strong that he was able to rise to his feet, stare at Rastignac, and say in a hollow voice, Young man, luck comes while we are sleeping. Then he fell stiffly, as if he were struck dead. I'm so sorry to do this. We're continuing this tomorrow. I'm warning you. I'm warning you all, my friends. I'm probably going to cry by the end of this book. Or subvert that emotion and start yelling. Either way, it will be to the detriment of my neighbors. Whatever. From the underground. Goodbye.